Hey, this is Tom from MVP Chess. Welcome back to another episode of Your Move, where I analyze chess.com member games for free. If you want to appear on the next episode of Your Move, please leave an instructive or entertaining game you played in the comments section. Right, so today we have a very interesting game from chess.com user HarrisonOReibow, rated 867. He's from New Zealand, and his opponent, rated 881, is from Ireland. As you see on the board, we have a London system, the dreaded London system. It's kind of a love-hate thing with the London. Either you love playing it, you love its practicality and avoiding opening theory, or you just hate it because you think the positions are dry. Well, I'm of the opinion that the London is a really good practical weapon for white. And in my experience, I've gotten a lot of really fun, interesting positions out of the opening. And I think this game kind of proves my point. So Harrison decides to meet bishop f4 with knight f6, good development. And after e3, Harrison went for bishop f5, as we'll see. With black, not only with my repertoire with black, but I'm also speaking from experience on the white side of the London. I think the systems with c5, knight c6, and queen b6 are the most testing for the London player. You know, the dark squared bishop has vacated the queen side early, so this pawn on d4, this pawn on b2 can become a little bit vulnerable and weak and difficult to defend. So I think that this development scheme for black is best. And if you're a white player who plays the London, these are definitely the critical variations that you need to look at. But bishop f5, this is a really good move too, especially if white doesn't know how to respond. You know, we can call this maybe black's most ambitious try. So most London players, like white here, will continue in a very systematic fashion, right? That's kind of the allure of the London system. You can play your triangle setup against pretty much everything, get your king castled and reach an equal position, but have a balanced middle game on your hands without having to know a lot of opening theory. But unfortunately for white here, black has claimed this really key diagonal. And as you London system players know, this bishop on f1 is often white's best minor piece. Normally comes to d3 and exerts a lot of pressure on black's king side. And there's even some positions where black's sacrificing on h7 with the bishop to launch a really, really cool attack. So if white doesn't have this square for the bishop and just continues in normal London fashion, black has equalized and, you know, in some position maybe even slightly better. So it's important to know how to respond to this. So over to you. If you're white in this position, what would you play to try to punish the move bishop f5? Pause your videos. Okay, like I was just talking about with black, I think white's best move in this position is c4. Now, a lot of London system players, I think, would refrain from playing a move like this because you can kind of see we're going into Queen's Gambit territory, and most people play the London, a queen's pawn system opening, to avoid the main lines of d4, c4. But this is the principal approach to try to pressure black center, quickly, and maybe even bring this queen out to b3 and hit this vulnerable b7 pawn and try to punish black for prematurely leaving the queen side undefended. But knight f3 just kind of gives black everything he wants. He's got the key diagonal for his bishop. And then white signals his intention to spice things up, to make this a sharp game with h4. If you've ever played the Caro-Kann with black, think about the advanced variation of the Caro-Kann, like the Tal variation or the Shirov variation. When you see this move h4 with this bishop out here on f5, you really need to be on high alert that this bishop doesn't get trapped with a timely g4, h5. So very often it's a good idea to maybe play h6, to play h5, just to give this bishop a foxhole to retreat in if things start to get crazy on the king side, which they do. Okay, so black develops the knight to c6. This is a very common move for players rated under 1,000 to make, but it's not best. We don't want to disrupt the coordination of this c7 pawn and this knight. So our ideal coordination would be to play the pawn out to c5 first and then have the knight behind it. You know, John Bartholomew, who used to be my coach, talks about this a lot on his YouTube channel, is the happy marriage between the c pawn and the knight. So that would have been better. This restricts black's c pawn a little too much. And after knight e5, very common move in the London and queen pawn system openings in general, whether it be the Kala or the Zucator, knight e5. This is a really annoying knight to deal with for players of all levels. And then Harrison plays queen e7. Yeah. So I think signaling an intention to go to the queen side. I understand his dilemma here. He was probably looking at, like, where can I move my queen? Obviously, I don't want to go to d7. It's attacked by the knight. Queen d6 would run into knight g6. This is really a symptom of not playing that pawn out first, right? Because then we don't have a problem with the queen's development. The queen can come out to b6. The queen can come out to a5 in certain lines. But queen e7, who's not happy about this move? Besides me as a coach. It's this bishop on f8. This bishop on f8 hates the move queen e7 because now it's got nowhere to go. So, over to you. If you're white in this position, what would you play here to punish black's last move? Pause your videos. Yeah, I think black could play, could play two moves. The simple c3, which is kind of a nice blitz, rapid move, right? Nice and quick. We want to keep the queen out of b4, right? We don't want this queen coming to b4, checking the king, and also attacking this vulnerable pawn on b2. White's other option is to exchange here on c6. Notice the knight covers the b4 square, and after captures, then we can play c3 and maybe follow up with b4 and then route this knight to the c5 square via d2, b3. Kind of like a similar plan that you would see in some variations of the Queen's Gambit declined exchange variation for black, if you've had experience in those lines. So if I'm white, I'm looking at one of those two options. But instead, white just opts for simple development. Notice the bishop's got to come to this diagonal and not the more active d3 square. But I think white is kind of going all in on this idea of kingside expansion. Bishop e2 is really a precursor to playing g4 and expanding on the king side and trying to go after this potentially vulnerable light squared bishop. But it does allow the queen to invade. Queen b4 check, and after c3, queen takes b2. White can't castle here, obviously, because the rook in the corner is hanging, so he plays knight bd2, and queen takes c3. Yeah, it's really tough as a chess player to know when it's safe or not to go pawn grabbing on the queen side like this, especially since black is still a little bit behind in development, hasn't gotten his king castled yet. Can you get away with that? You know, that's like the ultimate test in the night off, right? With the poison pawn variation. Very similar here. But white certainly has got some counterplay, I think, in this position if he proceeds correctly. But white continues full steam ahead with pawn to g4. I think white was willing to give up these pawns on the queen side knowing that he had the pawn thrust g4 in his back pocket. Harrison captures on g4 with the bishop. And over to you now. This is, I would say, the most critical position in the game. How do you recapture on g4 if you are white? Pause your video now and try to find the best solution. In the game, white captured with the bishop g4. Now this is a sharp position, and as I've said in my other Your Move videos, I'm analyzing this without an engine, so I might be missing something here. But the problem with bishop g4, oddly enough, is this rook on a1. This is going to become the problem tactically for white in this position. And Harrison was up to the challenge by finding the awesome move, knight takes e5, removing a defender here of the g4 square. So let's just look at this line. If white captures here on e5, black takes on g4, queen takes g4, and uh-oh, this rook in the corner is hanging. White's going to have to interpose with the queen to save the rook on h1, and this game is toast. So it would have been better for white in this position to recapture with the knight. Congratulations if you saw this move. Okay, so this way, what black isn't able to undermine one of the key defenders on the g4 square. So now after, let's say, black captures, bishop takes, the queen doesn't have to come to g4. So this rook on a1 is still defended. So this was really the key variation in the position. You know, instead of g4, I think black could have also white could have also considered playing rook c1 here, like leaving the king side where it is and just kind of arguing, I'm going to play rook c1, maybe take on c6, invade on the c file. You're still 2 moves away from castling, and I'm going to get dynamic compensation that way. If I'm white, that's probably how I would have played, but I understand white wanting to follow through with this thematic idea h4 g4, especially because it looks like it works no problem. But unfortunately, white was a little inaccurate in how he captured on g4. So after Harrison alertly plays knight takes e5, great move, credit to white for spotting this problem and playing bishop to h3. Okay, so, you know, white is obviously losing in this position, but white's got the bishop pair, and who knows, you know, at a game at this level, really anything can happen. So Harrison alertly saves the knight with check. Good move. The nice thing about the knight coming to the d3 square is it defends against a rook coming to c1, which is what we were talking about earlier and could generate a lot of counterplay for white. So the king sidesteps and Harrison castles queenside. Ooh, this is a very dangerous move. You notice all the paint here. Pretty much all of white's forces are coordinating towards the queen side now. And by castling in this direction, you're kind of justifying, in a way, white's material deficit, right? Black captured these pawns, the b and the c pawn on the queen side. Now, all of a sudden, white doesn't want those pawns anymore. White wants open lines. He wants an open b file. He wants an open c file to attack this king, this vulnerable king on the queen side. So, over to you in this position. What would you play instead here, instead of castling to the queen side for black? Pause your videos. So I think the best continuation here for black is knight takes f4. I think this is cleanest. Remove one of white's key attacking pieces. After white recaptures, we play bishop d6, a nice tidy move, developing our last piece, defending the c7 square. And after rook c1, we've got this other handy move, queen d3, getting the queen off the c file. With gain of time, we can castle our king, bring a rook to the c file, push c5, and white is toast. So this would have been, instead of castle's queen side, a way for black to have converted his advantage much easier without allowing all of this unnecessary counterplay from white. So white goes all in, and this is what I'm talking about, right? Is bishop takes c7 a sound sacrifice? Probably not. But it creates some potential issues, right? Especially with this unfortunate coordination of the queen and the king, envisioning a rook coming to the c-file. This is why castling queenside was just an inherently risky move. So white activates the queen. I like this move by white, gaining time against this knight on d3 and also targeting the queen side. And Harrison has to play kind of this funky move. He doesn't have to, but I think it's kind of a neat solution. Knight c1. Okay, getting the knight out of harm's way and attacking the queen. So the queen moves. Queen b5. I think that moves fine. We want to keep the queen, if we're white, active on the queen side. And Harrison invades with the queen on c2. I probably would have liked to see bishop d6 here, perhaps, or here's another handy move to always make when you castle queenside. Maybe the move king b8, just to get the king off the c-file. But you know, queen c2 is, I think, is also a fine move. It's an active move. It also attacks this loose knight on d2. So black plays king g2. He's willing to give up the knight on d2 to activate this rook on the c-file. So I think that's a pretty practical choice from white. If I'm white in this position, I'm probably recapturing with the h rook, not the a rook, okay? Because the a rook, we would probably, you know, you can envision us bringing it to b1. This rook on h1 is the one that needs to come into the game. That's the one that wasn't really doing anything all the way over on the king side. All the action's happening on the queen side. So if we're white, we want to get our forces over there. And black sidesteps, and just what I'm talking about. White then plays rook c to b1, losing a tempi there, right? We should have, if we're white, we could have this position with a rook already on c1, and you know, sometimes that's a difference between a win and a loss in a chess game. So black defends with b6. Harrison's alert there, saw the threat of checkmate on b7 and defends it. And white's, you know, again, going all in. This is all you can do, right? You're down 5 points of material. Play a4 with the idea of going a5 and just trying to open up black's king. But black's got a really nice response. Knight e4, centralizing the knight, attacking this vulnerable square. White defends with rook f1. And then black plays rook d6. I'm trying to find the justification of this move. I don't really know. I think maybe Harrison was a little worried about the queen coming in here. Harrison does have a move that looks to me to end the game on the spot. So pause your videos. If you're black, what are you playing in this position? Yeah, you found it. Knight c3 with a nice fork. And yeah, I mean, I think white can pretty much resign in this position. But okay, look, Harrison's played a good game here. It's hard to criticize him. He just wants to complete his development. And after bishop f3 attacking this knight, I think then Harrison spotted the key idea and found the killer shot, knight c3. Great move, Harrison. Forking the queen and the rook and ending the game on the spot. Black resigned here. Now, white can kind of get out of this fork a little bit by counterattacking the queen, but it doesn't really matter because after knight takes b5, rook takes d2, and let's say knight c3, black's just up a piece. More than that, a piece and 2 pawns, and is completely winning. You just bring the rooks to the c-file and advance the king, and I don't know. just get this 2-on-1 pawn majority going and making a queen. And this is easy to convert. I'm sure Harrison would have done that no problem. So understandable that white resigned. So thank you so much for that game. I hope you enjoyed the analysis, and if you haven't done so, please subscribe to my new YouTube channel and check out my website, mvpchess.com, if you want to elevate your game. Thanks for watching.